Hi everyone, I'm Zahidul Amin. I'm one of the co-founders of Light Castle Partners. We are a Bangladesh-based consulting firm. Last year, we had conducted this study on the poultry sector in Bangladesh in collaboration with Lariv International. And this particular study was commissioned by the Dutch government. In this presentation, I would want to summarize some of the key findings of the study that we had conducted. We have also tried to gauge the potential impact of the COVID scenario on the overall poultry sector in general. If I look at the overall structure of the presentation, we would be focusing on the macroeconomic factors which would impact the sector or which are already impacting the sector, the overall bird's eye view of the poultry sector in Bangladesh, the detailed value chain scenario, some of the essential bottlenecks. We'll also be looking at the regional opportunities, some of the key players who are operating in the market, and overall regulatory and the business climate framework in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, as we know, is a young country with the average age of 28. The population size is 167 million, and Bangladesh has strong growth potential, and we have been growing at more than 6% GDP rate for the last 15 years. Alongside, Bangladesh's growth has been quite high, led by the RMG sector and funding from the incoming inflow from the remittance. Bangladesh, for the first time, has crossed the $2,000 marks, and we are going to become a middle-income nation within the year 2026. And Bangladesh has a rising middle and affluent class population of 134 million, which is expected to increase significantly more, according to a study by BCG. In terms of the protein consumption, we know that Bangladesh's per capita protein consumption is on the lower side due to low income, or protein consumption has been low, and significant protein source comes from fish in Bangladesh, because predominantly we are attuned to consuming fish, and fish availability was on the higher side, given that we have a number of rivers flowing through the country. However, over the last 10-15 years, consumption of poultry, broiler meat has been growing due to commercialization of the sector, leading to lower prices and more affordable pricing. And it's expected, based on our projection, we expect consumption to keep on increasing. For example, according to our projection, CAGR growth rate is expected to be around 3%, and egg consumption is also going to grow in tandem because it's an affordable source of protein in Bangladesh. In terms of the per capita consumption, we will see that Bangladesh's protein consumption is quite low when you compare with regional peers. But just as I've mentioned before, protein consumption would be growing in tandem with rising income and preferences of the consumers. In terms of the sector, the overall poultry sector has undergone commercialization. A lot of large players have entered the market over the last 20-25 years, which has contributed to significant productivity and growth in production. The sector, if we can broadly divide, is composed of 4 segments. One is the broiler segment, the layer segment, the Sonali segment, which is a crossbreed of Rhodes Island Redcock and a Fayoumi hens, and which is quite popular because it's quite similar to our Desi hen, our indigenous hen, and the Desi breed, which is the indigenous variety, and which is considered to be the most expensive option. If you look at the detailed value chain, let's first have a look at the broiler value chain. We will see that GP stock is usually imported from the international market, and we have a number of GP farms. There are 9 large GP farms. We'll be talking in details in the subsequent part of the presentation. And the overall PH stock, annual PH stock, is around 4.2 million, which is produced, and there are 175 broiler breeding farms and hatcheries which are available, producing around 525 million broilers per year. In terms of DOCs per year, to be honest. So in terms of the type of farms, there are 3 types of farms. There are commercial farms. There are broiler DOC for semi-scavenging, the size of which is around 500 to 1,000 birds. And there are backyard-based, smaller scavenging farms, broiler-based farms, which has a capacity of 300 to 500. These farms end up producing the chicken that we consume per year, and some of which is sold in the wet market. Significant part of it is sold in this wet market, and a very small percentage, 2%, is further processed in the form of ready to cook or ready to eat products. In terms of the layer segment, we understand that there are 2 types of 2 streams across the value chain. One is the traditional layer GP stock, which is imported, the PS stock, and there are 125 layer farms and hatcheries which are producing the DOCs. These are subsequently sold off to the commercial farms and the other type of smaller farms available in or spread across the region. And overall production of layer farms includes 15.5 billion per year, and majority of this is sold in the wet market, while a very small percentage is sold through more formal channels. Sonali chicken, which I have mentioned before, also produces around 111,000 Sonali, yeah, and there are 125 large hatcheries and breeders which sells it to the smaller farms, and annually 3 billion Sonali based chicken eggs are produced every year. In terms of the broiler Desi and Sonali, as we know, these Desi farms are Desi variety has been indigenous and has been available, and every year 250 million Sonali chicks are processed, while around 250 million 250 million Sonali chickens are processed every year. If we move on to the GP farms, as I've mentioned, there are a few players who are currently operating, and some of them are using varieties like Hubbard, Cobb's, and Lohman varieties of chicken. And this market, the DOC market, is basically dominated by these players. And the largest player is definitely Kazi, which is one of the largest with the highest market share. In terms of the breeding and the hatcheries, the larger integrated players are dominated in the market, but there are quite a few other mid-sized players who are also selling off DOCs in the market. And there are around 75 broiler breeding farms, and there are 125 layer breeding farms which are available. These are some of the pictures of the farms and other facilities in Bangladesh. In terms of the slaughtering facilities, the market is quite at a very it's at a nascent stage. There aren't any independent processors in Bangladesh. There are a few slaughtering houses which are maintained by large players, integrated players, including Bragg Poultry, Kazi, Quality, Eon, who are actually selling processed products like nuggets, sausages, and other products. And the government is in the process of setting up some slaughtering plants in the wet markets. And in Chittagong, there has been one pilot. In Dhaka, the government is also planning to set up a few slaughtering plants in some of these markets. However, given the COVID pandemic, the government and the development partners are quite keen on formalizing the sector by setting up more formal slaughtering facilities. In terms of the inputs, significant percentage, 50% of the corn has to be imported. And for soybean meal as well, we have quite a few crushing facility, but a significant, roughly around 40% of our soy meal has to be imported. In terms of the feed, the market size is 5 million metric ton, which is growing at a very, very healthy pace. In terms of the larger players, the largest players in the poultry segments are Nourish, Quality, Paragon. And we are also aiming to grow this market, or the feed market segment is growing at a very fast pace. If you look at the segmentation, layer and broiler feed constitutes around 60% of the market, because the sector has been formalized, and most of the players tend to depend on commercial feed due to high FCR and higher productivity. In terms of the bottlenecks and challenges faced across the value chain, we have seen that animal health and disease control, feed formulation, the quality of the feed, broiler and hatchery management, lack of knowledge, biosecurity, food safety, access to finance have been identified as major challenges. There has been specific challenges in terms of capacity development, enforcement of rules and regulations as well. In terms of the regional opportunities, poultry farms are spread across the country, but there are quite a few production hubs. For example, Ghazipur, which is quite close to Dhaka, is one of the major hubs, and there are quite a few hubs in the Rangpur and the Rajshahi divisions. And there are opportunities for growth across the country due to rising demand for chicken meat. If you look at the SWOT analysis of the sector, we'll see that Bangladesh has strong growth fundamentals. We have data to perceive that demand for protein or chicken poultry would grow at a very fast pace. There are opportunities for foreign direct investments as well. However, there are weaknesses in the form of lack of adequate physical infrastructures like port, roads, and other facilities. Bureaucratic red tapeism is also a major challenge. There are challenges of climate change and natural disasters. Current animal health practices are not up to the mark. There are scope for further improvement, and consumer preferences are for warm chicken because of the issue of halal products. Many of them want to see the live chicken slaughtered in front of them. In terms of the opportunities, as I have mentioned before, per capita meat consumption is going to go up with rising income, and there are opportunities for first mover advantage, and there are some export opportunities as well for exporting to the 7 sister states of India as well. In terms of threat, there are challenges since the overall biosecurity arrangements are not up to the mark. There are challenges of disease outbreak. The debt burden for the top players are quite high, and the quality of the equipments that are currently used is low priced and of inferior quality. If we look at the development opportunities, we will see that there are significant opportunities for investments in the poultry and the hatchery sector. According to our estimates, within the year 2025, approximately 4 to 6 billion euro of investments in equipments are going to be required, and 10 to 15 millions of investment in hatchery equipments would also be required. Feed consumption will grow in tandem with demand for poultry or the size of the poultry sector, and there is demand for 25 to 40 million euro of investments in the feed milling sector. And processing also is expected to grow in tandem with rising income and the advent of middle and affluent class population who would want the convenience of processed food in general. If you look at the other segments, we go back a bit. We will see that there are other opportunities in terms of housing as well. It's expected that there would be need for at least 30 to 50 million euro for investment for layer housing equipment. If we move on, we'll see that these are some of the key players who are operating in this market. Most of these are integrated, having presence in starting from the feed production to actually DOC production and also rearing of chicken. Kazi Farms, Nourish, Paragon, Aftab, Quality, CP, which is a Thai-based company, Provita. These are some of the major players who are operating in Bangladesh. In terms of doing business, Bangladesh hasn't done quite well in the ease of doing business ranking at 168, but there are significant opportunities in terms of the government's willingness to come out with investor-friendly policies. Government has automated 29 steps of the 37 steps which are needed for entering the market, and government is in the process of automating a lot of market entry process. Although corruption is a major problem, however, there are still opportunities, and the government is quite keen on making it better for the international investors to enter and operate in the market. With this, I would want to end the presentation, and I would be happy to take in questions which would enable you to better understand the sectors in general, and look forward to hearing from you, and feel free to reach out to us if you have specific queries. Thank you so much.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and hello to everyone tuning in from various time zones. My name is Anne van Leeuwen. I'm the ambassador of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to Bangladesh. It is a great pleasure to speak to you today. You have just heard from Sahed about some of the trends and developments and volumes in the poultry sector, and I will attempt to supplement this story by adding the Dutch perspective. But let me start by thanking VNU Asia Pacific for helping us organize the slot today, and I would also like to thank our partners Larif International and Lightcastle Partners, with whom we work together in Poultry Tech Bangladesh. And of course, a big thank you goes out to the other members of the Poultry Tech Consortium. It is exactly this public-private partnership that comes in at the right moment. And when I say thank you, I do not only speak for my embassy, but also on behalf of the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. This is a great time to talk to you about some of the opportunities that we see in the Bangladesh poultry sector. Bangladesh is not on everyone's radar. And even if it is, it's not always for its business potential. While I realize that I may not be able to change the perceptions through one video message, I do hope to spark your interest in learning more about Bangladesh and about the opportunities that we see in the poultry sector. The Netherlands has stood shoulder to shoulder with Bangladesh for close to 50 years now. In early 2022, we will celebrate 50 full years of bilateral relations. During the last 5 decades, the Netherlands has been working together with Bangladesh in a relationship that was primarily based on development cooperation. And this cooperation has a strong foundation. There is a lot that the Netherlands and Bangladesh have in common. Both of our countries are low-lying delta countries with big river systems, densely populated, and with large agricultural sectors. If you look back over those 50 years since its independence, Bangladesh has come a long way. The country has made impressive steps in reducing hunger, poverty, and deprivation. And now, Bangladesh is about to graduate from the least developed countries group to become a full-fledged middle-income country. So this is an era of opportunity. And I hope that opportunity is why you join us today. With impressive GDP growth, a rapidly expanding middle class, and a strategic position in Asia, Bangladesh is increasingly open for business. And the world is only just starting to realize that. For the Netherlands, the relationship with Bangladesh is changing. As it's fashionably called, we go from aid to trade. Meaning that we will increasingly focus on mutual trade and investment, and that we will reconsider our development approach to make sure it fits with the needs of a middle-income country. This transition, of course, is not an overnight process. The Netherlands is interested in a stable, economically strong Bangladesh, where plenty of jobs exist, with opportunities for future generations, where high-value goods are produced, and where business opportunities are found everywhere. One of the most rewarding aspects in the transition from aid to trade is the fact that, plain and simple, we as an embassy are encouraged to seek more cooperation with you in the private sector. Of course, we do not have to start from scratch, but we do have to rethink our approach, do our homework. And my embassy, together with the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, has commissioned several market scans to better understand opportunities in Bangladesh in a variety of sectors. The poultry sector turned out to be one of the most promising sectors so far. Bangladesh is home to almost 170 million inhabitants, and as I just noted, this is one of the fastest growing economies in Asia Pacific in recent years. As a result of the growing middle class and thus increasingly spendable income, the consumption of animal-based protein, including poultry, meat and eggs, is growing. To meet that growing domestic demand, investments in enhanced production techniques can offer lucrative opportunities for companies and knowledge institutions in virtually all segments of the poultry sector. We feel that we've struck a fantastic balance with a consortium of willing and able partners who support the poultry sector in becoming more competitive, sustainable, and more responsible. The next speaker, Mr. Zahid Al-Amin, will tell you more about this consortium. I hope that today will help you to come to consider Bangladesh as the next Asian tiger, a Bengal tiger, because I believe that is what Bangladesh is. Too often Bangladesh is considered to be disaster-prone, heavily populated and poor, and those challenges do exist. But there is also another, much more lucrative side, and the poultry market is just one of those promising sectors. I will not sugarcoat things. Doing business in Bangladesh is not always without challenges, but pioneering is never easy, and the potential advantages of being an early mover could reap serious rewards. During my time in Bangladesh, I've already found out that the Bangladeshi people have a can-do mentality and an incredible sense for business. They're always willing to think with you. I've also found out that you will experience the tremendous hospitality as an essential part of any relationship in Bangladesh. We as an embassy will continue to work on increasing the available market intelligence and explore the opportunities for mutual visits and trade visits. I hope that once the COVID situation is over and allows us for traveling again, I will be able to welcome you to Dhaka. My team and I stand at your disposal, and please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You're always welcome. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I would be sharing some details on the 4-year-long Poultry Tech Bangladesh project, which got launched in April 2021. Before going into details of this project, it's imperative to give some backdrop on why this project was conceived. Uh, Lightcastle and Lariv were commissioned a project or a market study on the poultry sector back in 2019 by the Dutch embassy in Dhaka. Our main objective was to understand the existing opportunities in the poultry sector and also to identify potential value chain bottlenecks which are hindering the overall development and growth of the sector in general. The report got launched in May 2020, and based on some of the recommendations, the Dutch government decided to fund this project and to support this project. And this is part of their aid to trade initiative, which is expected to facilitate, foster partnership between Bangladeshi and the Dutch counterparts. The project has 3 key parts. One part is to perform studies in knowledge management in order to accumulate the existing knowledge which has been floating around in order to support the industry players, support the partners who are going to be closely involved with this project. Another part of this project is to finance or fund demonstration plans, demonstration poultry layer processing plants, which would act as a benchmark for other industry players. Alongside, we also intend to foster collaboration, foster transfer of technology, transfer of knowledge, which is expected to bring about sustained changes in the value chain, the poultry value chain in Bangladesh. If I look on the potential opportunities, one part is specifically on demonstration activities. We are in the process of selecting, as we will be sharing in details, we are in the process of selecting potential farms where these demonstration activities can be done. The study that we would be conducting would also be looking at potential technical assistance areas where the existing value chain players in Bangladesh would be seeking assistance or in terms of capacity development and knowledge transfer. And as part of the project, we have combined a group of large Bangladeshi and Dutch poultry sector players. If I can mention a few of them, Henrik's Genetics, Nutrico, Van Arsen, Past Reform. In Bangladesh, large players like Aftab, Kazi Farms, Morel, and Mavitech have been formally incorporated and as consortium partners. Alongside, we are in the process. Lightcastle and Lariv International have been acting as the project management partners. And this project is, as mentioned earlier, this project is getting funded by the Kingdom of Netherlands and the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. In terms of the project activity, we have started working on a very detailed study, market study, which is a follow-up to the study that we had conducted last year. The main objective of this study is to update our understanding of the overall market, given the harm done by the COVID scenario. Alongside, we also wanted to provide in-depth information to the value chain actors so that they can make better decisions. We also want to provide guidance through this content for properly implementing the project. And this report is expected to provide the baseline for impact assessment for the subsequent part of the project. We are hoping to complete this study by December this year, and hopefully this would be available to the partners in general. So alongside, we are, as mentioned earlier, we are in the process of supporting the industry by setting up demonstration plants in the hatchery, layer farms, broiler slaughtering, and further processing as well. We are in the process of discussing with potential partners pertaining to the potential areas or potential Dutch counterparts who would be supporting these demonstration plants. As mentioned, we have shortlisted a few players, like one broiler and one layer farm, and we are in the process of selecting the slaughterhouse, the processing plant, the partners for the slaughterhouse processing plant, and a few other demonstration partners. In terms of partnerships, we are facilitating partnerships between Bangladeshi and the Dutch counterparts. For example, Kazi is in talks with Past Reform, Henrik's Genetics, Morel is in talks with Aftab, Mavitech, and the local partners, Axon, Lariv, and Lightcastle would be supporting the implementation project. In terms of the implementation of these demonstration plans, we are trying to establish semi-closed demonstration broiler farmhouse which would be an upgraded version, having drinking systems, ventilation, heating systems, biosecurity solutions, which is expected to increase the overall productivity for these firms and act as the benchmark for other players who are envisioning improvement in their facilities. In terms of the other facilities, we will be implementing trainings and capacity development initiatives for the industry players. And we are in the process of currently identifying the potential areas where the local counterparts would be requiring capacity development support. Alongside, there would be a series of networking events, trade missions, whereby Dutch counterparts would be visiting Bangladesh to better understand the opportunities, to find out potential partnership opportunities, and Bangladeshi counterparts would be visiting the Netherlands as well to better understand the overall industry best practices which can be emulated for Bangladesh. And we are hoping that with the receding COVID pandemic, this would become a reality in the coming years. These initiatives would get further impetus. Thank you for your patient hearing. From Lariv, Matthias Brennan is leading the initiative, and I am leading the initiative from Bangladesh on behalf of Light Castle Partners. We hope to hear from you, and we look forward to collaborating with you in the coming days. Thank you so much. And we are hoping that the overall poultry sector would be significantly benefited by this poultry tech project. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Zahed, for your presentation. Dear audience, we would like to open the floor for your questions. You could address these to either Bas Blauw, representing the Netherlands Embassy in Dhaka, or Zahed Amin of Light Castle Partners in Bangladesh. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat box. I will select those and address these to either Bas or Zahed. Thank you. So first question has been raised. Zahed, I guess it's typically one for you. So in case companies are exporting into Bangladesh, they are faced with import taxes. This is, of course, not only typically for the poultry sector, but also for other industries. Would you have any ideas how companies might be able to tackle this? Zahed.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthias. So basically, Bangladesh unfortunately has a high tax regime whereby the government looks to impose relatively higher taxes on different equipments. I agree that it's going to be quite expensive to import products by giving a high taxation or a high customs duty, given the fact that the market is quite price sensitive and they would want to purchase equipments and materials which are very cost competitive. As a result, what happens is many a times Bangladeshi players tend to prefer Chinese and Indian equipments, which are cheaper and they can remain competitive even after paying for the customs duty. One strategy would be, although it's quite difficult for an individual company to do anything about it, but in general, Bangladesh has double taxation avoidance treaty with a number of countries. As far as I'm aware, Indonesia is in talks with Bangladesh regarding a free trade agreement, and Malaysia might also be. As far as I'm aware, Malaysia doesn't have a free trade agreement with Bangladesh or a double taxation avoidance agreement with Bangladesh. This might actually help lower the tax barriers. Apart from that, it's probably quite difficult because stakeholders would have to engage in policy advocacy in order to reduce the overall taxation structure in Bangladesh, which might be a cumbersome process. I hope I could answer your question.
Thank you, Zahed. While awaiting further questions from the audience, maybe a question I would have for Bas Blauw, representing the Netherlands Embassy in Dhaka. So Bas, hey, the ambassador just elaborated that the Netherlands and Bangladesh have a long history in cooperation. In recent years, you are also increasingly focusing from a traditional aid role towards a more business-oriented role. Could you elaborate a bit on what are your ambitions and what kind of activities you foresee to implement? Bas, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Matthias, for the question. And it's true. I mean, as the ambassador said, we are currently in this aid to trade transition, which means that for the past 50 years, we're very close actually to the moment where the Netherlands recognized Bangladesh in February 2022, exactly 50 years ago. That we've worked on a number of sectors, including cooperation on water infrastructure and just overall general development cooperation. The last couple of years have included, of course, also the garment and textile sector. But there's always been an interest from the Netherlands for the agricultural potential in Bangladesh, not only from the development side, but companies have also done business in Bangladesh, even if it's on a smaller scale in a more ad hoc type of way. I think the potato sector is one good example. And what we're trying to do now is basically to find where our niches lie. So if we can look at certain sectors in Bangladesh that have that basically present the gaps that we can fill with Dutch expertise or knowledge, and where our companies express an interest, that's where we try to basically incentivize them, give them a little push, or try to invite them to come actually check out Bangladesh and see what the opportunities are there. And I mean, now that we are in this transition, we still have some funds available to do some concrete projects for this. But increasingly, we'll also look towards a bit more innovative ways of financing these types of activities, including through the FMO, for example, the Entrepreneurial Development Bank, and private sector entities, to see how we can facilitate it. And I think as an embassy, our role is changing from a traditional development donor towards more of a facilitation platform for doing business here in Bangladesh. Let me leave it at there. Thanks.
Thank you, Bas, for elaborating on your position. And I see another question dropping in, which I would like to raise to Sahed. And this relates to the expected developments of the poultry sector. So you just described that there is a new initiative upcoming or just launched named Poultry Tech Bangladesh, which is a cooperation between the Netherlands and Bangladeshi stakeholders and to strengthen the industry. Just curious to learn, could you elaborate a bit on where the industry is currently standing? What are the expectations for the next 5 to 10 years, volumes, values, which segments within the poultry sector you envision to be growing fastly? Sahed?
Thank you, Matthias. So the poultry sector, based on our previous experience and based on the historic market growth, the poultry sector has been growing at a phenomenal pace. Let me explain why. One thing is, among the different segments, if you compare aquaculture, livestock, and poultry, the poultry sector is more formalized in its ways. The market is more structured. There are a large number of integrated players who are present from feed to the processing industry. So the market has grown at a very rapid pace. That has been one of the main reasons. Another reason is the overall demand drivers. Bangladesh, as we know, has a large population of close to 170 million people. The per capita income is growing at a very steady pace. So given the rising income, protein consumption is also going up at a very good pace. Bangladesh's per capita protein consumption is one of the lowest in the region, but it's also growing at a very fast pace. Given the fact that protein or chicken-based or poultry-based protein is one of the cheapest available sources. For example, egg is one of the cheapest available sources for protein. Broiler meat is also another available sources. It's expected that it's going to go up. Apart from that, urbanization also has a big role to play, because urbanization rate is going to reach around 50%, or 50% of the population would be living in the urban areas within the year 2030. As we know, urbanization is closely related to advent of more restaurants, more fast food and other things, which would also increase the demand for poultry. So considering these factors, I personally believe, based on historic data, that the market is going to grow at a very strong pace, at least more than the GDP rate of 6 to 7%, and this will keep on contributing as one of the largest segment when you look at the other subsectors like aquaculture and livestock. Hope I could answer your question. In terms of the segments, our understanding is like both the segments are expected to grow. Broiler meats or broiler chicken demand would keep on growing, and also layer would also keep on growing. Bangladesh also has a different strand, which is Sonali, which looks somewhat similar to the indigenous chicken available here in Bangladesh, and the price of that chicken is relatively higher compared to broiler, and that segment is also expected to grow. But unfortunately, that subsector is plagued by technical factors like high disease rate, which is impacting the quality of output. But that segment is also expected to grow. But overall, I believe that all the segments are expected to grow at a very good pace. Over to you, Matthias.
Yeah, thank you, Zahed. Interesting information. And another question comes in, which I would like to address to you. That is, someone from the audience would like to learn what is roughly the indication of the number of farms which are currently considered as open versus the more controlled, so semi-closed, closed houses within poultry farming. So I guess this relates to both broilers as well as layers. Do you have any insights, Zahed, respect to this matter?
Yeah, so Matthias, I think we had covered this in our report that got published last year. We're also covering this closely in this year's report as well. Bangladesh, in general, overall, the farming sector is very, very fragmented. A majority of the farms are quite small when you compare to other regional markets like Indonesia or India. Most of these are open or semi-open variety, and many of these farms, a significant percentage of them are located behind the house or at the homestead level. So these are very small, like 300 to 500 birds or 2,000 to 3,000 birds. So in terms of environmental standard, unfortunately, many of the farms are unable to meet the standards due to lack of investments or lack of knowledge and learnings. So there is a lot of scope for investment, a lot of scope for knowledge transfer in this segment. But having said that, a lot of larger formal players are also entering the market. They also have state-of-art farms with very large bird capacity, and that percentage is increasing, but at a very gradual pace. If I could mention a few names like Kazi, Aftab, there are other players like Paragon. They also have their own farms which are much larger in size. They also do the processing, and they also sell processed product or semi-processed chicken as well. But the percentage, their contribution is quite small, less than 5%, if you look at the overall demand.
Excellent. Very interesting. Yeah, thank you. Very interesting information. And next question I would like to raise to Bas Blauw of the Dutch Embassy. So we are aware about the impact of COVID, but particularly for Bangladesh, and then maybe related to agri-food and hopefully poultry in specific. Bas, could you elaborate a bit on what you have witnessed, how COVID impacted the industry?
Thank you very much, Matthias. It's an excellent question. I think, COVID in general has been quite devastating in Bangladesh. I don't think we've seen sort of the scenarios that we've seen in India materialize out on the streets so openly, but it's definitely been at least 3 to 4 large waves with a lot of people affected. And then in particular, also the Delta variant, the latest wave, which led to a lockdown over the summer, had a huge influence on especially the agricultural and informal sectors in Bangladesh. I think it's important to note that the informal sector and the agricultural sector make up a huge part of the domestic economy. And for many of the day laborers, it's been very tough to actually get back to work during these lockdowns and to actually adhere to the lockdowns and to the measures that were taken by the government. In addition, of course, vaccination degree is still very low. So we're also hoping that things will improve, that no new variants will show up, because that will inevitably hinder the economy in general. the government has, after the first waves, been quite proactive and provided the SMEs with economic stimulus packages. That I think has alleviated some of the economic damage, but I think we're still sort of riding that wave to see how it actually will influence society as a whole. I think what has been especially tragic about the COVID pandemic is sort of the lower middle class, where people who have started to basically move out from subsistence farming have been forced to go back into those layers of and those modes of existence. So we'll have to see. For the poultry sector in particular, I'd also have to check with Zahed what sort of the particular effect on that value chain is. But I think it's clear that the future is far from certain, although the numbers are going down currently, and we're hoping to continue that positive trend for now. Over to you, Zahed.
Sure. If I can add a few things to answer the question, I think it's quite early to gauge how the COVID scenario would impact the overall food awareness, because we were under lockdown. But based on our understanding, the government is probably more serious about ensuring safety, adequate food safety, particularly in the poultry sector due to COVID scenario, because of potential for any kind of spread. That's the thing that we can see. I think the government is more serious than they were pre-pandemic, but it's probably too early to gauge how the COVID-19 would directly impact the food safety awareness in Bangladesh in general.
Okay, thank you, Bas and Zahed. Zahed, a question from the audience I would like to raise to you. So in various other Asian markets, we also see an upcoming trend towards organic food products, also organic poultry meat or organic free-range eggs, etc. Is this also something which is lifting off in Bangladesh?
Matthias, I think this segment is pretty much non-existent in Bangladesh, particularly because of two factors. One factor is the term organic is quite vague in Bangladesh. It's quite, there are no standards which would stipulate that this particular type of chicken is organic. So that is one issue. Another main challenge is organic farming in general is more expensive compared to traditional means of farming. And that means the pricing of that product is going to be on the higher side. So since the market is quite price sensitive, it's quite difficult to target the domestic market. Of course, there might be the international market available for export, but as far as we are aware, Bangladesh is not that price competitive in the international market, particularly when you're talking about meat and also processed chicken products. The competitiveness is clearly lacking. So considering that this segment is probably not, if I won't say it would be non-existent, but it's hard to find.
Okay, thank you. And is there as such any awareness, for example, about the usage of antibiotics? And so, for example, from the consumer perspective, are consumers aware and demanding more information or antibiotic-free products? Is this something you are witnessing currently in the market?
So let me just share a bit about the main challenge. Unfortunately, usage of antibiotic is rampant in the farming sector because of a few reasons. One thing is due to lack of knowledge. Many of the farmers tend to think that if they preemptively use antibiotics, their chicken would remain healthy, and that is the challenge that we have seen in the field. Apart from that, antibiotic usage has been pushed by the pharmaceutical companies as well. Many of them have their sales agents like promoting their sales, and many of them have been encouraging usage of more antibiotics for the poultry. That is another problem. In terms of awareness, unfortunately, majority of the people are not quite aware of the ill effects of or the long-term impact of usage of antibiotics in chicken. But I think due to mass awareness, at least a few higher segment from the higher income population are quite aware, and they have been purchasing from these larger players like Kazi, Aftab, Bengal Meat is there. They're selling a more reliable chicken, which they promise to be antibiotic free. But this segment is quite small. overall, the consumer awareness is quite low in Bangladesh in terms of antibiotic usage.
Okay, thank you, Zahed. Meanwhile, just mentioning to the audience, you are in the VConnect session about the poultry industry in Bangladesh, and we have here Bas Blauw representing the Netherlands Embassy and Zahed Amin of Lightcastle. We would like to invite you to raise your questions in the chat box. So one last question which is popping in about the Poultry Tech Bangladesh initiative. Do you expect, and I guess that could be a question for both of you, but firstly for Bas, do you expect an additional increase of Dutch companies doing business in Bangladesh in terms of trade and investment? What are your expectations, Bas?
Thanks a lot, Matthias, for the question. And of course, my expectations, I'm an optimist, so I expect and hope that more will come. But jokes aside, I think it's good to note that we're, of course, not the only ones going through a transition, right? So many other countries that have diplomatic presence here are phasing out some of the development cooperation and focusing more on basically renewed bilateral relation that is based more on mutual trade and investments. For us, that means that we will use the instruments that we have to facilitate more B2B linkages and to be more of a facilitating platform for those types of businesses. And I think it ties in neatly also to where Bangladesh is going as a country. 50 years after its independence is very close to the graduation from the least developed countries group. And that will bring some new challenges and some new responsibilities. But first and foremost, I think opportunities. And I don't have the illusion that we as an embassy are able to see better than many of the companies what those options are. But what we can do is pull some of the information, put some of the network at the disposal of some of the companies. So I hope that in that sense we can help that facilitation. So I mean, as the ambassador also said in the intro video, it's not an overnight process. It will take a while. We're very grateful also for the support of the Dutch Enterprise Agency, who also use their instruments towards the same goal, and also for the Bangladesh Embassy in The Hague, who interestingly are also pursuing a very similar goal of attracting more FDI to Bangladesh. So I think in that sense, everyone is aligned, focusing on that same goal. But of course, the proof is in the pudding. We have to see on the ground that it's possible, that the opportunities exist, and I think those first sort of early movers need to move in order for the rest to come. So I'm hoping that that's possible. It will require, of course, a bit of pushing from our side, a bit of pulling from our side, but first and foremost, also on the Bangladesh government side, we'll need to see some improvements in the business climate. I think the question about the import taxes and Zahed's remarks and double taxation, those are very real challenges that we as an embassy can also work on. Maybe not on a case-by-case basis, but definitely towards the overall business environment. And I found so far that even with the government, it's everyone's very willing. Everyone's willing to think with us and to basically make these strides for improvement. So I'm quite hopeful to see all the perspectives improve. And then in particular, I hope that with the Poultry Tech Bangladesh, we can be, a consortium of first movers in that sense. Let me just pause there. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Bas. And maybe in addition, Zahed, question to you. So we learned that the Netherlands is an important trading and investment partner for Bangladesh. Bas already elaborated a bit on the expectations and ambitions for the poultry sector. Could you highlight a few examples of Dutch companies which have invested in Bangladesh in recent years or have a strong trade relationship?
Yeah, absolutely, Matthias. I think among many of the European counterparts, I think the Dutch are quite ambitious, and they're, I would say, a bit more forthcoming when it comes to making investments. Netherlands have been, Dutch companies have been investing significantly over the years. And I can probably name a few companies. For example, there is a company called Dutch Bangla Pack, which is a joint venture of Dutch and Bangladeshi counterparts. They have been doing quite well in Bangladesh. Apart from that, FMO, just as Bas was mentioning, FMO has made some critical investments in a few large companies. For example, there is a large retail bank called Dutch Bangla Bank, which is probably the largest retail bank in Bangladesh. It was co-founded by FMO, but they were one of the main promoters of the bank. Eventually, they divested from the business entirely back in 2019, making a good return of money, but they have done quite well. Apart from that, FMO has also invested in ACI Motors. ACI is a large conglomerate. So there are quite a few examples. FMO has also invested in Grameenphone, which is Bangladesh's largest telecom service provider with a valuation above $6 billion. So these are some of the examples. Apart from that, there are quite a large number of mid-tier players, large players who are thinking of entering Bangladesh. I hope you remember, Matthias, that last year when we were co-hosting the virtual summit where the Dutch embassy and the Bangladesh embassy in Netherlands were involved, we actually sort of came across a lot of interested players who wanted to learn more about Bangladesh. Maybe in 5 to 10 years back, there were hardly any interest. I think in terms of that, I think people are more interested. They're looking at Bangladesh as an investment destination. We are getting some good PR as well in the global media, which is increasing the interest level. Our per capita income is growing. So we are not looking at Bangladesh as an export launchpad, but as a market, as a domestic market, which has the ability to make purchase decisions. So considering that, I think the picture looks rosy. The government is quite serious about attracting investment. If you look at BIDA, which is Bangladesh's main body for attracting investment, they have been automating many of the processes for entering Bangladesh. They have so far automated 29 steps. You can actually get online tax certifications. You can register your name. You can register your company online. You can do a lot of steps online, which is a great development. And I believe the government is quite serious about attracting investment because we actually need jobs. We actually need more investments. And we actually have the hunger to fulfill the needs. And we also have government is setting up 100+ economic zones, specialized economic zones. And these economic zones require investment. And these investment would create new jobs, which would help us help create jobs for 2.2 million people who are entering the job market every year. I hope I could answer your question, Matthias.
Yeah, thank you, Zahid. A lot of interesting information, and I'm glad to learn that there are a lot of examples of successful companies which have been able to develop their business in Bangladesh. And we expect a lot within the coming years of this market, fueled by the various macroeconomic parameters you just described. Bangladesh being one of the fastest growing economies in South and South Asia, but I guess Asia Pacific in a broader sense. So we do expect that many international companies will establish or grow their activities in Bangladesh in the years ahead. We discussed a lot about the poultry sector. Next to poultry, I guess agro-food is an important industry, both in employment but also in income generation and exports for the country. What are the top 3 segments within the agro-food value chains which you would like to highlight to the audience as being of interest?
Sure.
Matthias, you want me or Zahid to
A question to Zahid, and then the next one
Sure.
is for you, Bas.
Sure. Matthias, I think the agro-processing sector is doing quite well. For example, last year, I'm referring to the year 2020-21, the agro-processing sector probably for the first time had crossed an export threshold of $1 billion, so which is a great achievement. Agro-processing's biggest, rationale is the sector employs, the whole value chain employs roughly around 41% of our working population. So improvement of this sector in general, the agriculture sector, I'm talking about the agriculture sector in general. If the agro-processing sector grows or improves, it would have a direct impact across the value chain. A lot more people would be impacted positively, and resultingly our disparity would decrease and our per capita income would increase further. In terms of the segments, I feel there, if you look at the overall poultry value chain, we personally feel that the feed industry is growing at a very good pace, given the fact that poultry demand is growing up. So as a backward linkage, feed demand is also growing in tandem. Although there are quite a few large feed manufacturers in Bangladesh, there are opportunities for investment here in Bangladesh because there are opportunities for technology transfer, there are opportunities for significant investment, which would enable economies of scale. This would be one segment. Apart from that, the livestock sector, which has been quite small compared to the other segments, have been growing at a very significant pace. If you look at the government statistics, our livestock population has tripled over the last 5 years. This is due to the fact that due to strict blockage of smuggling of Indian cows in Bangladesh, so there has been a sort of like an artificial barrier or sort of like a barrier for Bangladeshi companies, and the price of cow meat has gone up, which is encouraging more players or more individuals to set up cow farms or for fattening farms. Milk demand is also growing, although powdered milk demand is growing at a faster pace. But there are opportunities for further improvement of the milk value chain. But we feel that demand for milk is also going to grow at a very strong pace in the future, and there are other opportunities across the value chain where powdered milk could be manufactured here in Bangladesh. Since the demand for powdered milk is growing at a rapid pace. If I could give you an example, over the last 4 to 5 years, demand or import of powdered milk has doubled. And it's expected that it's going to double again in the next 5 years. So given the scale or the size of the market, it would make more sense for us to manufacture powdered milk within the country's boundary.
Thank you, Zahed. We are almost reaching the end of this session.
Can I just make one minor addition to Zahed, Matthias?
Yeah, go ahead, Bas. And then I have one more question for you, and I then guess we have to wrap up.
Sure.
So, Bas, yes, go ahead.
I'll keep it very brief. No, thanks, Zahed, for this overview. And I think we would approach this question a little bit differently, of course, because we look a little bit more at sort of where the Dutch niches and gaps might lie. And I think there's quite some overlap in the sectors that we're focusing on. But I just wanted to make note of some of the sectors that we're still working on and hoping to also attract some Dutch companies to Bangladesh. And that's aquaculture, horticulture, dairy, and food processing for now. So I'm excited to also see how that pans out. I think there's quite a bit of overlap with the things that you mentioned just now. Thanks.
Thank you, Bas, for this edition. One final question we have for you from Vianney Roland, who is questioning to you, Bas. Interesting information. How can we reach out to you?
I've just become familiar with the vConnect, the whole system. So feel free to send me a message or to connect to me through that system. Be happy to talk and speak about the type of support that we could offer.
Excellent. And I guess the same accounts for Zahed. If people would like to reach out to you, then I guess via the vConnect Asia system, they can find your contact details. Well, we're now getting to the end of this session. I would like to thank both Bas Blauw of the Netherlands Embassy in Dhaka, as well as Zahed Amin of Lightcastle Partners in Bangladesh for their contributions, and the audience for listening in and their valuable questions. Hopefully we will see you soon in Bangladesh, and we'll be able to support you with facilitating your growth in the poultry sector. Thank you for now, and over to the organizers.